Assalamu alaikum to some of you, and peace to the rest of you. I'll let you know in advance that this one is not going to be very nice and it's not going to be pretty. This is regarding Shadid Muhammad, and the two that I know of being responsible for refuting him in English, at least. They're responsible for refuting him in English. Mostly one of them. In actuality, Musa Richardson wrote something refuting the NOI for their polytheism and the things that they say about Allah. I don't know if that refutation says anything about them calling the white man the devil. I'm not sure. But when Musa Richardson wrote that, Shadid Muhammad pointed out that people know that it's a different religion from actual Islam, but that there's some other issues to be talked about now, which are white supremacy, police brutality, lynchings, mass incarceration, so-called war on drugs. Shadid Muhammad was right, and they didn't want to listen. I don't know Musa Richardson's response, and so he's not on the hook right now with me. But Abu Iyaad refuted Shadid Muhammad. And these talks about Shadid Muhammad began a long time ago because he went to the movies. And I'll be honest with you, I really don't give a rat's behind. He went to a movie theater. There are times you can go to a movie theater. It's possible to go to a movie and escape from every single legitimate concern the scholars could have. You could go on an early Wednesday afternoon. It's empty. You watch a movie that's not harmful, or at least you didn't know it was harmful till you see it, and you're not pressed up against some lady you don't know, and you're not watching anything that you knew was going to be filthy, nasty, funky. It's possible. These things can happen. That's a very small issue, but that's when they started getting on them. I don't even know when this happened. 2014, Shadid Muhammad, in the month of May, attends the Islamic Film Festival in New York City. Shadid Muhammad, in that festival, addressed the issue of Malcolm X, the topic of Malcolm X in his life, Malik el-Shabazz. And he gave credit to Malik el-Shabazz for being one of the first to say something that he got murdered for saying, or maybe got murdered for saying, which now we can all say without being murdered. We can all say it. During the life of Malik Shabazz or Malcolm X, if I had told people that Elijah Muhammad was not the messenger of Allah, I would have been killed, or I would have had to kill somebody. If you had said that to someone in the NOI, they would have said, let's go out back and fix this. If you told one of them, this is not Islam, they would have said, let's go out back. They would have fought you and maybe even beat you. This is real. So I'm telling you that Shadid Muhammad was correct in what he said. Back then you say it, you get murdered. It happened to Malcolm, Malik Shabazz. Nowadays you say it, they don't murder you for it. They may disagree, they may not talk to you, or they may talk to you. They may try to convince you, but they're not murdering you. Not for that. He said this towards the end. That was one of the last things he said in that speech. A few months later, I think it was maybe July or August, that Ramadan started in 2014. And he addressed the NOI during that month. And I didn't listen to that address, so I don't know if he said or did not say that Elijah Muhammad was not the messenger of Allah. I do know that Abu Iyaad refuted him for not saying that in that particular speech. I know that. I don't know who Tahir Wyatt is. I don't know much about him. I've forgotten what I learned a few days ago, to be honest, because I haven't heard many of his talks. But I've listened to Shadid Muhammad's side of the story. And some people have even tried to say, well, you know, he exaggerated. And he probably did. Maybe. I don't know. But these refutations of him are getting out of hand because someone's not doing their homework. Abu Iyaad said that Shadeed Muhammad did not say to the NOI in that talk that Elijah Muhammad is not the messenger of Allah. But a little research and a little homework could have shown two things. One, he did say this to a mixed crowd at the Islamic Film Festival, standing less than 2 feet away from where Al-Hajj Malik al-Shabazz was shot to death and martyred. Second thing a little homework could have shown is that it is understood in the African American community that the NOI has one religion and the Sunni Muslims have something else, and they don't agree that each other's religions are correct. I will say this. When I came into Islam, I didn't come into Islam without first going through a search for the problems and a solution to the problems of black people and other oppressed people around the world, especially the darkest skinned ones. Why? Everybody else sympathizes with them the least. That's the truth of the matter. When you suffer, the darker your skin while you're suffering, the less everybody else sympathizes with you. That's real. That messes me up, but I learned this a long time ago. I wasn't surprised to have a little bit of light skin privilege, even at the cost it comes with. I wasn't surprised to have a little light skin privilege dealing with white folks. I was surprised when I realized I had light skin privilege dealing with other non-whites. Where the hell did this come in? I thought they loved themselves. Turns out they don't. Abu Iyaad dug into Shadeed Muhammad. And a little homework could have eliminated the need for that. The real issue, as I said in my last talk, is that the Salafi community worldwide, with the exception of a type of Salafi community that even other Salafis say are disbelievers, and they call them names that they don't deserve. They call them Khawarij and they're not. There's one type of Salafi community, and I ain't going to say its name, but there's one type. Other Salafis call them Khawarij and they're not Khawarij. They don't practice this stuff. And yet and still, they don't go along with white supremacy. But the rest of the Salafi community goes right along with white supremacy. They don't come out vocally and say that it's okay. They don't do it. They go along with it in a passive manner, as though it's just taken for granted that this is correct. White is right, it's normal, and it's beautiful. And black is less normal, it's a little bit wrong, and it's ugly. They just go along with this at a subconscious level. I don't know what race Abu Iyaad is. I know that Musa Richardson is white. Musa Richardson, it is correct. He did a refutation of the NOI. I'm in his corner with that. I understand it. It is nothing of Islam. Their politics are astounding and great, but their beliefs are they're outlandish. They're not just another religion, but they're outright outlandish. If there is a super spaceship orbiting the Earth with super black men on this spaceship and they have their own air force, then why is it that they're not taking out certain centers of white power that are responsible for letting black folks get killed and their killers get away with it? Seriously. I mean, but that's beside the point. They wrote the refutation. I'm not knocking that. Musa did. He wrote the refutation of the NOI. Okay, fine. Shadeed Muhammad was right. I might have addressed it in a different way, but Shadeed Muhammad was right. Why didn't you address the issues of white supremacy, police brutality, colorism? Why not? So-called war on drugs, mass incarceration. Why don't you address these issues? That's a legitimate question. That's a legitimate question to ask to the entire Salafi community. Why are you not addressing these issues? I've sat with Salafis that were ignorant and educated alike in Saudi Arabia, and I've heard them casually refer to black people as slaves. And when I get ready to correct them, they want to correct me and tell me to calm down. Like I'm not even supposed to care. No, you just said some old fly, slick, racist stuff. Okay, terrorist. Then they want to correct me for that. But they never want to correct each other for using the word slave. It takes a while. Eventually they do accept correction, but it takes about 3 or 4 arguments with them where I tell them, I know you're going to try to gloss this over and justify it and all this, and you don't really mean it. I just don't care. I'm not going to forgive you till you stop. And go back to your people and tell them to stop doing this. It takes about 3 or 4 of these times, and then eventually they'll start accepting correction, but it pops up again, someone slips, and we're back to where we started. This is a problem with Arabs, and it is a problem with Salafis. Bottom line, Salafis Arab or not, Arab Salafi or not. If you're one or the other, you come from a community where this is a goddamn problem and it is being overlooked and nobody's stopping and saying get rid of this stuff. No one's saying anything. Until my black behind walks in the room and I overhear this. And if I was darker skinned with nappier hair, they wouldn't say it in front of me. I know because I've asked other black folks, do they say this in front of you? No. Why would they do that? They know better. Oh, so they say it in front of me because they forget there's a Negro in the room. And I know the word used to call somebody a nigger, Zanji. I know about that. It just means somebody from Zanzibar, really, but you know, start talking about Zanji, Zanuj, and it means nigger. It's always used as a pejorative. So, you know, I'm sorry, but the Arab world is white supremacist. It's not violent, it's not hateful, but it's still racist and white supremacist. It's anti-black to a certain extent. And that means that the Arab world they need to change who the hell they are. They are inferior to other races, especially to black people, not because they're Arab. It's because they're racist as hell. And the ones of them who are not racist, like the Jordanians, for instance, are not included when I say that they're inferior. Any white supremacist is automatically inferior to the non-whites they look down on, because they look down on them. That's why. Racism automatically makes you inferior to the ones to whom you think you are superior. That's how racism works. If you take the hadith correctly, if you take the teachings of Islam correctly, because there is one thing that makes a person better than someone else. It's not race, color, origin, or language, or last name. It's taqwa. And the one who has real taqwa and is not racist is automatically better than the one who has taqwa and is racist, let alone has no taqwa and is a rat bastard subhuman racist hypocrite. And that's real. Abu Iyaad, I'm going to be honest with you. My suspicion is that the real reason you wrote that refutation of Shadid Muhammad was actually for the same reason that I think Musa Richardson wrote the refutation of the NOI, although I'm not knocking Musa, not for that. Now, if Musa has refuted Shadid Muhammad since then, I got problems. Definitely. But let's be honest. All of y'all walking around trying to refute Shadid Muhammad are really doing it because Shadid Muhammad is addressing an issue that you all don't like to address, and that's white supremacy. You just want to sweep it under the rug. What's the reason? Most of you want to marry the lightest skinned women you can find. That's the real truth of the matter. That's really what goes on. You want to marry the palest of women out there. And a lot of Western Salafis want to marry an Arab woman. And a lot of Arab Salafis want to marry a white European woman. Everybody wants to breed their future generations to make them paler in color. That's all it is. That's white supremacy. It's not a personal preference when a whole entire culture of people has it. It's no longer a personal preference. It is a cultural deficiency and cultural inferiority complex. That's real. And this needs to be addressed. He addressed it. Y'all didn't like it. Musa wrote the refutation of the NOI, but I believe that Musa wrote the refutation of the NOI because he saw that the NOI calls white people devils. That's a natural reaction. It's a normal reaction to have. But I would say, Musa, if you refuted them strictly for their shirk, and I admit I haven't read the refutation, if you refuted them for their shirk and their polytheism only, and that's the reason why, like I said, I'm in your corner. Fist up, my hat goes off to you. Right on, brother. If you wrote the refutation because you were sour about them calling white people devils, then your reaction is correct, but you have to understand the context. You cannot blame them for that. We can't do it. Just because you are not going to boast about the heritage of your race per se, oppressing everybody else on the planet, does not mean that you won't feel some way about them calling white folks devils. It's not your fault what they did. White folks are not devils any more than anybody else. We get this in Islam, but you know what? if that's the reason why you wrote the refutation, if it even makes you angry, then you have to be twice as angry about Arabs calling black people slaves, because when black people called white people devils, the Chinese also during the Boxer Rebellion called white people devils because they were oppressed. You see, it is because of the oppression of white people, of non-whites, that non-whites called them devils. That's the reason why. You see, they had an excuse to think white people were devils back then. There was an excuse. So if that's the reason that you wrote the refutation, then you were sour or sore about something that you should have overthought until you were no longer sour or sore about it. And again, I repeat that if you wrote it strictly because of the shirk, then that's fine. And just do the same thing for everybody. And you may have already done it, in which case I'm in your corner. And hats off to you. Abu Iyaad, you wrote the refutation that you wrote of Shadeed Muhammad because you want to use Tawheed to cover up social ills that need to be addressed. That's why. Shadeed Muhammad was correct when he said that a lot of the scholars in the Shuyukh in Saudi Arabia don't care what happens to African Americans. If they think about it, they do care. He didn't specify that, and if I was Shadeed, I would have been careful in how I said it. If they think about it consciously, then they will care naturally because it's human nature, and they don't hate us. But they don't think about it, so therefore they do not care. That is true. I know because I've sat with some of these some people who are qualified to teach, and they don't give a rat's behind. They're not thinking about black folks, good or bad, especially African Americans, North or South America for that matter. They ain't thinking a whole lot about black Africa for that matter. They don't care. It's just saying it's not in their frame of reference. They don't hear about it for one, so it's not brought to their attention, and if it is, they quickly forget because they got other things to worry about. Just to do the topic some justice. But Shadeed Muhammad was right. If I go to them and I try to tell them what's happening to black people in the Americas, they're not going to talk about it. I know because I've tried. I know that white supremacy, Abu Iyaad, runs the show even in Saudi Arabia more than Islam does, especially among the Bedouin people. I know because I looked for something that might darken my skin. I didn't find it. I knew I wouldn't. I just tried it to be fair. And I found things that lighten the skin, and I got photographs to prove it. And these are not in stores run by people from Pakistan or India or Bangladesh for customers from Pakistan, India, and Bangladesh. This is in a national Saudi-owned chain grocery store that I found these products. They were packaged and labeled, not in English and Urdu or in English and Hindi. They were labeled in English and Arabic, designed to whiten the skin. Lighter skin, guaranteed. 10 times whitening effect. I thought this was the land of Tawheed. So if there's nothing I can use to darken my skin, then why the hell is it that there's a market and people willing to buy something that will whiten their skin? I thought Allah doesn't make any mistakes, so why do they need to whiten their skin, huh? I have a valid reason I might want to darken my skin. Look at the climate I live in. Look at how powerful the sun is here. Might make some sense. I want to increase my melanin count. Okay, there's a logical reason for it. What's the logical reason in the Arabian Peninsula that people will want to lighten their skin, and no scholar is talking about this, even though it causes skin cancer? Because they're afraid to offend the people. The scholars have to lose this fear of offending the people. When you don't, I'm sorry, but when people are hypocrites like what the Bedouins are practicing, to be honest with you, and you don't offend them, you're not doing something right. That's real. It is obligatory on the people to love and respect the scholars. It is obligatory on the scholars to tell the truth, especially when it's uncomfortable. Not just when it's comfortable. No, when it's uncomfortable, it becomes even more obligatory, more important. They can do it with wisdom, but that doesn't mean they can't do it at all. You're going to have to offend some people. Eventually, they'll get over it. Just like a child that doesn't want to take correction. But when they hear it the third time, they get over it and they take the correction. And then they realize that you don't hate them. And they're glad they made the correction. Well, that's what the Shuyukh here are going to have to start doing with the people. Hey, look, Bedouins, let's call it what it is. Allah said that you were stern in disbelief and hypocrisy in Surah Tawbah. He has another verse where he says that you act like giving charity is some kind of fine or penalty. And then in the third verse, 99, is where he refers to a minority of you that are good. Look, let's call it what it is. Your culture is hypocrisy. Straight up. You talk about Tawheed, you talk about Islam, and what do? You buy skin bleach. You smoke. Why do you smoke? You smoke because white people smoke on TV. You're not smoking because you saw some poor black person from Zimbabwe on television smoking. Let's be honest with this. Shuyukh, laymen, translators, all of you, let's tell the truth. If Saudis could not ever see anybody smoking on TV except poor black people in ghettos or in the worst of neighborhoods in African countries, they would never smoke. Let's just be honest about that. What's the reason that many Saudis don't follow any type of Sufism? It's not because, let's call it what it is. They're not following any type of Sufism because of the teachings themselves. You got liberals. They're liberal because liberalism is what the West likes. Specifically the white Western world. It's what it likes, liberalism. A Muslim that's liberal that drinks, for instance, goes out half naked in front of the public, in front of anybody that's not a spouse. Oh, they love that. You're not making, nobody here is making compromises to their religious practice because of what some poor black folks want them to do. If poor black folks want people here to do something that is Islamic, but it's not a part of the culture, they won't do it. How do you know? It's real simple. Let's just look at who you respect more. Who do you think is more normal? Ask a Saudi, would you marry an Arab woman? Yeah, okay, sure. Would you marry an African woman? No. Would you marry a European woman? Absolutely. Just look at that. Now, that's not a personal preference because everyone has it. What is it that the entire culture wants to do? The entire culture wants to breed its children and grandchildren to resemble the ones who oppressed everybody else. That's all it is. It is love for the oppressor and disdain for the victim. That's not the way of the Muslim. Shadid Muhammad addressed this. That's why you wrote the refutation of him, to be honest with you. It's not because he went to the NOI and he didn't say that Elijah Muhammad is not the messenger of Allah. He said it in the month of May 2014 at the Islamic Film Festival in New York when he was talking about Malcolm X's life. He said then that he was the first one to say the things that we now can say without getting murdered for saying, but that he got murdered for saying. He said this. It was only maybe less than 2 months later that he was addressing the crowd or the audience over the internet for an NOI event. And he wasn't the only one either. You didn't refute everybody. You got on his case. Abu Iyaad, let's call it what it is. You're sore because the NOI called white people devils and Shadid Muhammad talked to them and he addressed them, but he didn't curse them out and get aggressive with them. That's what you're upset about. You can advise Shadid Muhammad and nobody will say anything. If you just advise him and say, look, in the event that I had to talk to them, I would say X and Y and Z to make certain things clear. And then when he tells you, I would agree with you, they need to be clear, it's just that they already are clear. Because one, that ethnic community is aware of the difference. Two, I said it a short time ago at a mixed crowd, so the clarity is there. Your point is correct, it's just already taken care of. That would have been a different discussion, much better, much nicer. All this fitna gone. No, Abu Iyaad, you had to go and jump on a bandwagon and get on his case. You really mad because the NOI call white folks devils. And I say to you, so goddamn what if they do? Musa refuted them for the shirk. That's normal. You refuted Shadid Muhammad because he talked civilly to a crowd of them even though they call white folks devils. And Abu Iyaad, I don't even know what race you are. I have no clue. But I can tell that white supremacy and anti-blackness do not bother you as much as the opposite would bother you. You know, anti-whiteness and black supremacy. That would really get you angry and upset, more so than the currently existing white supremacy and anti-blackness. Abu Iyaad, there is no form of racism in this world today except white supremacy and anti-blackness. There are discriminations and prejudices that are personal, but there is no form of actual racism with power in a systematic level aside from anti-blackness and white supremacy. That's all there is. Nothing else globally. I don't know what you've written against anti-blackness or against white supremacy. I'm not sure. I did a search, I didn't find it. And if I find out that you did write something, I will come on here and say I found out you wrote something. I'll give you credit. But I didn't find anything like that now. But people are circulating your refutation of Shadid Muhammad. You wrote that less than a month ago from the time I'm recording this. Even though he said this thing 3 years ago, you wrote that. Listen, I'm calling, now not just you, I want to say to the whole Salafi community, especially the Shuyukh, all of you. Tackle this issue. Get on them. Anybody that you hear asking a Westerner, can you help me marry a woman from your country, and they mean specifically a white woman, call them out on it. Why does she have to be white? Don't accept the excuse that it's just a personal preference. Just say, well, how come you have the same preference everyone else does if it's so personal? What's wrong with your Arab wife right now, huh? You got women in this country, brown-skinned women, Arab women, 40 years old, widows, divorcees, can't find a husband. You already got one wife, why don't you marry one of them? They're already here. What's wrong with them? I'm not telling you to say to them, go marry a black woman. I don't want most of you touching black women. You don't appreciate their beauty. You took for granted the white supremacist idea that white is beautiful and black is ugly. So I don't want these men touching black women. I don't give a rat's behind if he's got the biggest beard in the world. If I catch one of them talking to a black woman and it's not because she asked a question about this religion, I'll punch him in his jaw, in his chin. I'm not going to try to break his nose, but I will hit that ninja in his chest. What you doing talking to a black woman, blood? What's your problem? Straight like that. For what reason? Yes, black people are angry about the way that we get insulted and treated worse than other people, and we're right to be angry, and you all are wrong when you tell us not to be angry. You don't know how much some people pray against you when you do this. This is oppression. You're siding with the oppressor against the victim. That's all you're doing. Whose Islam is that? You can't sit up here and say that that's Islam. And if you try to say that it's Islamically valid to side with the oppressor against their victim, blame the victim and let the oppressor off the hook, then you left your religion. You say it's okay to do it, you left your religion. That's worse than doing it, actually. But the fact that you do it consciously after someone points it out to you, that right there is bad enough. You all want to sit up and say that he's a deviant. Hold up. If he's a deviant, what you think the community has been for the longest time? It ain't addressed the issue of white supremacy. Why is it so important? Why do I obsess about it? It's real simple. White supremacy and the acceptance of it by Muslims, subconsciously or consciously, is the reason that many black folks will not accept Islam. The reason many Latin Americans don't accept Islam. You give them, you establish proofs against yourself when you accept these white supremacist anti-black ideas. So don't blame me if I catch a non-black sheikh talking to a black woman and it's not answering a question of hers about the religion, and I get up in his face and maybe hit him in his chest. What you doing talking to a black woman? I know you call them slaves. How do I know? It's simple. You're not black, you are Arab, or you're not black and you're Salafi. That's all it takes. Or better yet, you're not black, but you are Arab and you're Salafi. And I've sat with many of you, and I know that you all do this because when you don't know I'm black, you use that word loosely. And when I get up and say something, and unanimously they tell me, quiet down, calm down, don't worry about it, change the subject. Everything's fine, Bilal was black, there's no racism in Islam. They start saying all these things that are the right things to say, but for the wrong reasons. I'm sorry, but I said it last time and I'm saying it again. You, the Salafis, are deficient in confrontation against white supremacy and anti-blackness. You suck at it. You get a 0 by default for not doing anything. That's part of the test. You just skipped over that part of the test and didn't even looked at it, just glossed over it. Didn't even think about it as you were skipping it. It's like running a red light. You do it 3 and 4 times. The 5th time you do it, you don't even know you're doing it. That's how you all are doing it. You don't even know you're doing it. You just skip the issue. And you take Tawheed as a rug to throw over that issue. No, Tawheed is the baseline. I get it. That is the baseline. That's everything. It's the foundation. It's the roof. It's the walls. It's the chimney. It's all of it. I get that. Ain't nobody saying it ain't. What I'm telling you is that you can't just talk about Tawheed and think that white supremacy is going to go away. You got to explain Tawheed. You got to explain white supremacy and the acceptance of it, even at a subconscious level. make something wrong with somebody's tawheed, you have to explain all of this. You got to explain that that today's white supremacy is the false God. It is the false religion. And the God of this false religion is the white Western world with its white Western passports. That's it. And the reward of this false God is the white woman and your ability to have whiter children with her. That's what it is. And you're not saying it. You're using something that is correct, which is tawheed, in order to hide something that is incorrect. That's just nasty as all get out. Something's wrong with your tawheed. I could say a lot worse than what I'm saying now. I'm just going to stick with this. When you do this, and somebody in India who is poor and very dark sees that they're not being treated with the same respect and love as a Frenchman who walks in to ask them questions about Islam and doesn't even accept it, goes back to his country, not the Frenchman, but the darker skinned subcontinent person, the dark skinned Bengali who's already Muslim, or the dark skinned Sri Lankan or Southern Indian that's already Muslim, goes back to his country and he hates Arabs and later on maybe even leaves Islam. It is your damn fault. That's real. You know, in Georgia, the state of Georgia, there was a man whose name I've forgotten. He was the first black mayor of Stone Mountain. He had been a Muslim before he got into politics. He'd gone to study in the 70s or 80s here in Saudi Arabia. And he heard people calling black people slaves. And he got into fist fights and the government kicked him out. Why did the government kick him out for punching people for calling black people slaves? They should have given him more money, not kick him out. Hell, that should have counted for some points towards his degree at the university. He's fighting against racism, the only form of racism there is in the world now. Anti-Blackness, white supremacy. What happened? This government here kicked him out. No Salafi Sheikh stood up to intervene and say, wait, he only did this because people were insulting a race. They were practicing racism in front of him. No, nationalism trumped Islam. And when he was getting on that plane to get sent back, he turned to the police officers. As the story was related to me, he turned to the police officers. He said, I'm leaving your country and your religion. And he got on and he walked on the plane, came back to the States. Plane landed, he was a disbeliever. Went into politics, became the mayor of a city in the United States. Became the first black mayor of a formerly Ku Klux Klan stronghold in the United States. I've been to that city. How do I know this story? I met his son. His son remained a Muslim throughout his life. But the father was so hateful of the racism that he saw in the Arabs, he left the religion. You can say it's his fault. I get that. It is true. He came back to Islam before he died. He left instructions with his lawyer, bury me as a Muslim, even though my Christian wife will say don't do it. He left those instructions. I know the story from the inside. You know what? You share in his guilt for all those years he lived as a non-Muslim. Every last one of you that never stood up against this issue and ever used the term slave to mean black, or ever said white mashallah after you said white and you didn't say black mashallah. Any one of you that's ever done these things, even if you didn't know it, you share in the guilt of all those years he lived and ate and breathed and drank as a non-Muslim, apostate. It's partially your fault too. Yeah. What do you think Allah is going to do to you when you are part of the reason that someone else apostatizes from Islam? I don't know what the penalty is going to be, but I don't want to find out. I don't want to have anything to do with anyone else leaving Islam. So I got to be careful how I act with Muslims and non-Muslims, especially with the ones who are oppressed or victims or just weak and have no influence. I'll be honest with you. We all get irritated by certain cultural practices others have. We all do. No one's knocking you for that. I'm not knocking you for that, Abu Iyaad. I'm not knocking you, Musa. Shadid, you get irritated with somebody because of a cultural practice. I'm not knocking you. We all get sick of it. But we got to admit that our own cultures have these nasty practices and irritating things to other people too. We got to be fair about it. Secondly, the other thing, very important. When you are mad or irritated about a cultural practice that someone has, or you're sick of someone talking because you don't understand their language and they won't shut the hell up, or any of these things, That's human, but you still have to be fair and just. And you cannot treat them like they're less than and let their rights are less than somebody else. And when you do treat them well, you can't feel like you're a hero for doing it. This is real. Yeah, I get sick of the way that the Pakistanis and the Indians speak Arabic, broken Arabic. But you know what? That doesn't mean I blame them. Who taught them how to speak broken Arabic like that? They didn't teach themselves that. Someone taught it to them. Why did someone talk to them in broken caveman Arabic? Because the person talking thought they were too stupid to learn how to speak real Arabic if they had spoken real Arabic to them. That's why. Thinking that they're stupid, underestimating their intelligence, so you teach them wrong. You teach them incompletely and incorrectly. So yeah, I get irritated when I hear it. I can't stand the way Egyptians speak Arabic. That's not even Arabic, it's just Egyptian. And I don't appreciate how they speak their same dialect to everybody else. I mean, they talk like that to each other. Okay, fine. When I talk to black folks, I use black English. But when I talk to an ESL learner, I can't use slang and informal English. I need to use the proper Queen's English, and I need to pronounce each letter correctly. Well, it goes for everybody, right? Yes, I get upset when Egyptians come to me and they talk that meshfish stuff that they talk. Like I'm supposed to understand they're Egyptian when they change 5 letters around just for fun, just to be different. How am I supposed to understand it? Yeah, I get sick of it. I'm human. Does that give me the right to treat them like they're less than? Nope. Not until they screw up. I got to treat them the same as anyone else. Their rights are the same. I don't have the right to cheat them out of any money or merchandise because I'm sick of them. I don't have that right. And if one of them lies on someone else or cheats or any of these other nasty things that we like to stereotype Egyptians for doing, which sometimes is true and sometimes not. When they do that, even when I retaliate against them for that, I got to retaliate only proportionally to what they did, the harm they caused me or someone else. That's it. So one of them tells a lie and gets my friend in trouble. I can't sit up in front of the judge and say, well, sir, he lied and he tried to murder my friend. I can't do that. Now I'm oppressing him. No, he lied, he got my friend in trouble, he cost him money, cost him some health, that kind of thing. Okay. Tried to murder him? No. He didn't do it. Same with all of us. And I'm not a hero because I go and I stand in front of a judge and I bite my tongue when I'm tempted to blame him for something else to add to the charge because I can't stand what he did to someone else and the way he talks. I got to be careful. You do too. So, let's call it what it is. Somebody's upset because the NOI called white people devils. So goddamn what? Go back and tell the white Western world to change how they treat people. Don't blame people for their reactions to oppression until you blame the oppressor first. Only in that case. But, the people are refuting Shadeed Muhammad because he told some nasty truths about people calling themselves Salafi. He told some nasty truths. I knew about some of this stuff earlier. I knew. Because a lot of the guys that he knew, a lot of the individuals he knew are from communities that I know. I don't know the individuals, but I know the communities. We're from the same country, even though we're from different regions. I grew up in the Southeast. He's from the Northeast. Where I grew up in the Southeast, many of the people were from the Northeast. I visited the Northeast multiple times. I was married to a woman from there, so I got to know the communities, and it is true, they are broken. And broken communities turn out broken people, and some of these broken people went over to this country to study, and they got bad manners wherever they go. So they're quick to jump on him for something like going to the movies. And once that happens, and then he has the nerve to confront the issue of white supremacy, of course, that's all it takes for others to come along and refute him. And that's really what he's being refuted for. He went to the movies once. That should have died down. Then he confronted the issue of white supremacy. That's really what it was. That's the real truth of the matter. Well, guess what? You're going to have to refute me too. You don't know who I am. I'm not a scholar. I don't claim to be. You don't have my real name. You never will. But you start blaming me for something I didn't do. The minute one of you does that, you start blaming me for something I didn't do. And I've got your name, then I'm going to find out about something you actually did and I'll expose you. And if you don't, blame me for stuff I didn't do. and you don't hold a grudge against me for confronting this issue of white supremacy, then I tip my hat to you. Assalamu alaikum, brother. Power to the people, right on. And I'm not going to do anything to you. But I'm telling you, I'm putting you all on notice right now. I am going to tell black Saudis, black Emiratis, black Qataris, black Omanis, I'm going to tell them all how these folks really talk about them behind their back. I'm going to tell them. I'm just going to let them know. When you're not around, they call you slave. Even if they don't hate you, they call you slave, like it's just okay. But if you call them terrorists or camel rapists, a towel head, a bomb belt, they can't take it. They can't tolerate it. So that right there is why they're unfair. Even if they're joking and they call you slave and you joke back and call them this, they can't tolerate it. That's unfair. They're the racist, rat, bastard, subhuman hypocrite, not you. There's something wrong with them, not you. I'm going to tell them. Don't let them marry your daughters and your sisters and your aunts. Don't let them do it. Because they look at black women as sexual objects. That's all. You know, a relief from sexual boredom. That's how they view black women. I know because they told me this. That's real. So don't let him marry any of your lady relatives, even if he's religious, unless he lets one of your black male relatives marry one of his non-black lady relatives for the exact same dowry and the exact same conditions, as I have said more than a year ago. And let me tell you, Salafi, something else too. I mean, it's strange that I got to say you Salafis, because there's now a division between the Salafis, the ones who are willing to confront this issue, and the ones who aren't, and who are always trying to sugarcoat it and sweep it under the rug. So let me tell you, sugarcoating rug sweepers, something. On the real. I already said what I said about the marriage when I got up and I told black folks in the Middle East, told black Middle Easterners, don't let a non-black man marry one of your lady relatives until one of your black male relatives can marry one of his non-black lady relatives for the exact same dowry, exact same conditions, exact same expense. Even trade only. Or don't let it happen at all. I didn't say this in order to, make something halal into something haram. That's not why I did it. I did it in order to not further divide us. I did this in order to stress the point of equality. The point of equality is much more important than one married couple. That's why I said it, and I don't apologize for it. I put a condition that doesn't exist in the Sharia. No, actually, I put one that does exist in the Sharia. Equality. I had to do it because nobody else would. Nobody would even confront this issue, so I had to say what I said. I was forced to. This is what happens when you buy into white supremacy, even if you don't know you're doing it. You force reactions that are otherwise un-Islamic from the people you were discriminating against, even when you did not know you were discriminating. You force this kind of thing. Black nationalism is a necessity for black Muslims. Why? You forced it. Your attitudes towards black folks forced them to look into black nationalism. This is why. I'm talking within the Muslim community. So when a black person who's Muslim starts talking about separatism and nationalism, it's because they're forced to. He shouldn't have had to, but he has to. So when I gave these conditions, I should not have had to, but I had to. And guess what? Here's what I wanted to tell you, sugarcoating, rug sweeping, issue evading so-called Salafis. When I put the video out and I said this, there were two tribes in the city I lived in that are related to each other, and they had two different reactions. The majority tribe said that I was a racist. They blamed me for confronting the issue. Blame the victim. The minority tribe that's related to the majority tribe, they told me what you said was fair, Blackheart. It's absolutely fair. It was just, hey, look, same conditions, because we got to get rid of this racism problem. One tribe said this to me, and the other tribe, the majority from whom they came, said the exact same thing that white supremacists and subconscious racists in the United States say to black people when we react to their racism and their white supremacy. Why are you talking about this? Why can't you just let it go? Because you're a racist, subhuman, hypocrite bastard, that's why. And you calling yourself Muslim, and you preaching this deen, and you taking real truths like Tawheed, but you're using them to cover up your falsehood. You worship white people, that's all it is. You worship the oppressor out of fear, and you look down on the victim out of contempt because your Tawheed is wrong. That's all it is. And you want to look like the oppressor. You want to be the oppressor. What's up with your Tawheed? That's what I've been trying to get at this whole time. And it should not have taken me almost 45 minutes to have to explain this to you. But it did. That's not my fault, that's yours. Because everything I was saying, I already knew your mental defenses and your mental answers to. And I had to address them as well. If white supremacy is your religion, even at a subconscious level, and that white Western world is your God, even at a subconscious level, meaning you didn't know you did it, something's wrong with your tawheed. And that's exactly what Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam was talking about when he said the hidden shirk is like a black ant on top of a black rock in the middle of the night with no moon and no stars. You can't see it. That's the subconscious. That's what he was talking about. It's in the subconscious mind. You're not aware you're doing it, but it's there. If you don't take account of yourselves, that's exactly what you wind up doing. And most of you do not take account of yourselves, so you wind up doing it. It is as simple as thinking that white is beautiful and black is ugly. That's the beginning of it. That's enough right there. If you think one black person is ugly and one white person is beautiful, that's individual thinking. But if you think that on the whole, the average, white is beautiful, black is ugly, something's wrong with your tawheed. You think Allah's a racist and makes mistakes. Either you think he makes mistakes, or you think he's a racist. Or you think he's mistakenly racist not knowing he's doing it. Either way, you've underestimated Allah. What kind of tawheed is that? And you got the nerve to tell people like Shadeed Muhammad, focus on tawheed, focus on Aqidah. He's talking about real issues. I mean, did not Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam follow real issues? He's more on the sunnah than you are, if you really want to understand it. So, I hope that this message has been a benefit. I've said what I said without hatred except for the oppressor. But I do not apologize for what I've said. Any mistakes were mine. Any truths I spoke were from Allah, as revealed to his messengers and prophets, alayhum salam. If I have hurt your feelings, that means there's something wrong with you, in all honesty. And anybody whose feelings I helped and not hurt, my compliments to you. And anybody whose feelings that I hurt, you need to go and take an account of yourself, just like we all do. You're no different from anyone in that regard. But if your feelings were hurt, then I'm glad I hurt them in order to get you to think about this issue. And if your feelings were not hurt, then I'm glad I did not hurt them, because that means you already understand the validity of the issue and the importance of the issue. I hope that this benefits you and me in the long run, and the ummah in the long run permanently. Assalamu alaikum.